Welcome to the Startup Sidekick podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Claire Dobson, and welcome to the first episode of the Startup Sidekick. I am beyond excited to get this podcast kicked off. We have an amazing guest today. This person is currently the founder and CEO of Little Taller, a marketing agency and venture studio. But his creative and sarcastic, so I've heard, mind likes to really explore into so much more, from CEO or co-founder of Allbound to professor to founder to venture studio and advisor. His passion for creating opportunities for others instead of himself is quite evident in everything he does. So please welcome Kyle Burnett. Kyle, please say hi.
Hello, everyone.
All right, Kyle. So let's just... Someone Google searches you, someone finds your LinkedIn profile. What's something that they don't find that you want to tell them about?
They may not find pictures of me like with short hair and no beard. And if they do, they won't recognize me.
Those were the long gone days, huh?
Exactly. That was before I really, really went down the rabbit hole of business building and just gave up all of my investment in myself. So I just let it all go at that point because no one has time for a haircut. Let's just keep building things.
And now we're here.
Yes, and now we're here. Well, and my goodness, I'm the very first guest. Oh boy.
Very first guest. I know. Get this kicked off right? Yeah, we like to go on tangents here.
It's only uphill from here, so we'll set the bar nice and low.
Perfect. Well, let's start. I mean, you originally co-founded Allbound with Scott. Like, what made that decision? Why did you decide to go that route?
I think you could probably back this up kind of career-wise that, like, in college, I was a journalism major, and my first job was because a roommate said, "Oh, my uncle works at a newspaper, and you're heading out of college looking for a job." And I was like, "Sure, introduce me." And from that point forward, every single job, everything I've ever done has been from somebody that I've known. Basically, the value of the network. And there's this, like, most people can draw dots of their chain, and my chain looks, was like newspapers to land in Phoenix to then, random networking event to meet somebody that introduces me to a company, to introduces me to somebody, this woman, Samantha Lang, who's a brilliant marketer here in Phoenix, who introduces me to Scott Salkin over coffee one day, 12 years ago, 14 years ago. And we literally, Scott's looking for somebody to help him build a little project. And I'm like, sure, I build things. And, and all we did was just goof around for an hour having coffee. And he's like, cool, you want to build this? I'm like, okay. And so, $3,000 for some project for Oracle later, we have this little tool, and we just hit it off, and then stayed in touch about wanting to continue to build things. And at some point I was a little bored and called up Scott and said, "I'm bored. Why don't I come on board at the agency?" Because he was running an agency at the time, and recruiting talent is always hard. And if you find anyone who's even remotely available that you're optimistic on, you take them. So he had kind of pushed me on that, and I was like, I don't know, I'm going to keep training for Iron Man and try not to have a real job for a few minutes. But I got bored. And so I joined him in a little bit with that vision of what we had started. Can we keep building more things off of it? And so we wound up doing that over the couple of years of the agency, building more things off of this, which was, eventually became Allbound. It was just sort of more features servicing the same audience. And it was purely out of sort of just luck of meeting somebody and of just timing that he ran a B2B tech marketing agency that started building portal things for, channel driven companies. And not, it was just random that he sort of fell into that line of marketing, and I happened to meet up with him. And I also happened to be a child of the channel. It's what my dad did. My dad ran an agency like mine as a kid. So here we are. But the timing of that just sort of fell together. And then over the next couple of years of us building on this, we just kept seeing copies of copies and finding commonality, and then just got the idea and the bug to spin it out and start a software company.
So was there a risk initially, or because the relationship developed and you just kept going, was it more of like the reward side of you're excited for something new?
Reward side is most definitely what drove it. And I could probably speak for Scott Salkin on that one too, that the reason why we started was there's this opportunity. And two, in 2014 in Phoenix, the startup scene was pretty young and,
Uh-huh.
a couple of years behind a lot of other markets, but it was pretty young in 2014. And so, but we did see the pattern. Scott's friends with some, Silicon Valley driven companies and people who run those companies and said, I see a pattern. Can we follow that pattern? And achieve success there.
Yeah.
And the thing really all came together amazingly quickly because Scott is just a great leader and super connected and a visionary. And it all came together fairly quickly. But the risk that you mentioned was all Scott's. It was his
Yeah.
agency. I was running
Okay.
it with him. So, yeah, I was fully invested and, overworking myself like I always do,
Mm-hmm.
but it was not my job. And it wasn't, the risk to me was no more than it's just a job that I was risking. To him, he was essentially taking 10 years or more of a successful business and saying, I'm going to then spin this off, get this out of here, and start this whole new venture. It was a
Mm-hmm.
tremendous amount of risk on his part.
Okay. So you got lucky there a little bit and not having to take the same type of risk. But you have, we'll talk about it later, but you have
Right.
taken the risk of your own as well going forward. Well, taking that step back, so putting yourself in those shoes, like what hit you right in the face that, for anybody just starting at a startup, employee number 2 through 5, like what's something that you're like, holy cow, all right, this is the startup life?
Um, I think probably like most ventures, there's the you don't know what you don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of arrogance and ignorance, to
Yeah.
paraphrase Mark Twain. That's why you're successful. And so there's, just plowing forward without knowing everything is totally okay. And so
Yeah.
what I think I really wish that if I could go back, what I would do differently is I would
Mm-hmm.
actually spend more of my own time and money to be more educated about the legal and structural setup of businesses, and about having somebody who's also an advocate for me, for my ownership stake positions and things that what I can do in the future. It's almost like we all just need our own agent so that
Yeah.
throughout your career you have somebody else who negotiates for you, because most people are bad at that. I mean, following stereotypes, I think women don't advocate enough and men over advocate. So,
Absolutely, it's a stereotype for a reason. We
yeah.
all need to be professional athletes, have our own agent, and be able to work through that stuff and just learn. Because I think that's the biggest part, right? Is you're just sucked into something so new that the ignorance part, you have no idea what you don't know. So
And and two, what you're doing is you're hustling, working really hard, and I'm an 80-hour a week moron. On a
mhm.
good, I just was 2 weeks on vacation. And I only worked 12-hour days, and to me and my family, we were like, "Wow, you really are taking time off. That's ridiculous. That's a problem." And so, but nonetheless, you are putting all of your effort and your time in there, and then kind of putting your own finances and other things at risk to build this.
Mhm.
And so you can either take that bootstrap route, or of course you can kind of go for the funded route at the time where funding is proper. We got funding literally like right out of the gate. So like just get all the praise to Scott Salkin on that and the people he knew,
Mhm.
that the idea was good, the timing was good, the market was good, his vision and the way he could show it and sell it were good, that we could sort of couple a bit of his resources he already had in his existing company with a handful of people, knowledge, background, things already sort of built that we could launch off of, along with some capital from investors
Yeah.
at the same time, that we could just make this clean break. The downside was is that we were then immediately working for the investors, that we were immediately working
Mm.
underneath the gun in the time frame of the burn down of the money, because we were spending to the level of the investor game, and that's a very different cycle to be on versus the bootstrap side. So
Very different.
we cut that short and went straight to the investor side. I can speak at length about the bootstrap side. I'm 4 years into that with what I do
Yeah.
now. Pros and cons all around, but I think that was two things that what I
Yeah.
learned from there is, one is the understanding what's in front of you, paperwork, structure, what's in your best interest, advocating for what is frankly in your best interest first and
Mhm.
foremost is crucial. And then second to that would actually be that understanding where and when funding should come in and the impact it's going to have on your mission and your culture.
And so do you like, so going about that, did you think that changed the culture at all? Like going right into the gate with investors versus more of the bootstrap version?
Well, I think yeah, I would say it changed it because there was four or five of us that were already sort of bought in and hustling that
Hmm.
that Scott could kind of self-fund a couple of us to get it going. And so it was a handful of us working out of basically a closet of an office space. And there was this cool us against whatever imaginary, giant we were
Yep.
going
Yeah.
after. That felt pretty good. The money as it would come in to kind of fund it to get going was neat. And you go, wow, that because it's validation, it feels great for all the right reasons. But
Mhm.
then it changes your metrics. So
Mhm.
suddenly you were hyper focused on the metrics that investors like to see and what metrics are going to be sexy to the next investors because the first
Mhm.
investors are in there to help you get to the next level, and getting to the
Mhm.
next level has to look a certain way in their minds, so they're guiding you and coaching you and pushing you on metrics that look a certain way so that you're now an attractive property to the person with the investors whose thesis aligns to that next level.
Yeah.
And so we wound up being, I think, a little too focused on that and not, and it created some disconnect of the team who's like, look, I'm just trying to build stuff and I'm just trying to sell and I'm playing the
Yeah.
sales engineer. So I'm trying to sell the stuff that's not built and make sure we can build it
Mhm.
and in a hurry. And I'm like, we can't serve all of these masters at one time. We can't serve investor metrics at the same time as serving whatever we can get out of a client who's trying to buy when we're so early stage that we're showing JPEGs on a screen telling them it's a product and knowing that now I'm signing up to make sure that we have it built and working before they're
Yeah.
ready for it because it's not real yet. Like it was too many masters at one time. And I think over the next year or two, what was really this ongoing struggle of the team is who were we really trying to serve? Were we really trying to serve the customers or are we trying to pigeonhole a customer into a story and a contract that fits our limited capabilities but aligns to our metrics to help us get the next money that we need.
Yeah.
It's too
Absolutely.
much to serve at one time.
And that's a good point. So, like, I mean, with Abstract right now, we're, working through the seed round. We're trying to close on that soon. So, it's all these different things that are coming in as we will start having investors dictating, hey, you need to hit these metrics and these. But we also are building the team, and we like Greg has this amazing vision for what he wants to build in a company, and I think we're all aligned with it. So we need to keep that in place because that's like the sacred part of working for this company, what you get out of it, but also how do we hit these metrics that we have to hit. So there's that fine line that you're really talking about there when you're going into that.
Yeah, and part of that is you're also making this assumption of who you're going to meet in the future, who's going to find you to be this attractive
Mm-hmm.
company. I think Jim Armstrong, huge fan of him and JDA Investments, and he was with Canal Partners.
Yeah.
And I think the way he tells the stories, he built his company at probably starting in the '80s, to JDA Software, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. Like he rode that thing all the way up. He's got a really great story on it, but it was bootstrapped. It wasn't investor driven, so
Yeah.
it was bootstrapped cash customer money, probably
Yeah.
plenty of debt and some other vehicles along the way. I don't know their full finances, but it was a different time, and and clearly it paid out for him to like probably the I don't know tens of billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
So it's an old school unicorn that grew over
Mm-hmm.
15 years to his eventual exit that then he can turn around and fund hundreds of other companies easily and I'll do great charitable work. But he told us when we were starting this, he said his advice was, I don't care about the sexy metrics. He says revenue is revenue is revenue. He says you build a good
Mm-hmm.
company with a good culture, great product, and great customers, and the other things will take care of themselves.
Yeah.
But
So
that is
great.
was but it's completely contrary to other
Yep.
investors because he wasn't and two, but his thesis is kind of different of he could keep funding it for his indefinitely if he wants to. So
Yeah.
yes, he
Absolutely.
wants to grow it and get to the next level, exit, make a multiple, and keep playing the game. But his objective is completely different, which is and off of his experience and is do that. And that's what I'm trying to do now with this company is, and other ventures that we launch and people that I, consult with is, you know, don't have too many masters that you have to serve, especially an imaginary figure in the future who might appear on the horizon and you don't know what it is that they really want to know at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's, it's so insightful because I think, especially from my side of, I worked at an agency, was a small company, but not necessarily, wasn't one of the first employees starting it. So going down this route with Abstract has really allowed me to kind of see that side of it. And there's so much education that just for, I think, any early stage employees, learning the different steps, how all of that works with investment opportunities, I think really helps provide a little bit clearer picture. But let's take a step back. So you talked about you just love to work 80-hour weeks and all that fun stuff. When you're an early stage employee, do you think that, that type of ownership mindset, let's say you're not the co-founder, you're employee number 4 or 5, do you think that ownership type mindset is needed? Or what do you feel like really separates those successful early stage employees?
Ownership is everything. We're going through a kind of a revisit here at a little taller of our mission, vision, values, and
Yeah.
how do we align to this, because I'm probably the worst at establishing that process and putting everything on a bit of a cadence there.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, because I'm just a hustler, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm like, sell a bunch of stuff, get people in place, let's build, keep on beating this. And
Yeah.
um, uh, so I think I'm kind of losing my train of thought there a little bit. Sorry,
All good.
but
All
I
good.
but I think yep, totally gone now.
Well, so for those early stage employees, do you
Oh,
think,
sorry.
the mindset, what do you think has, at least the people, let's say at Little Taller or even at Allbound, because you've mentioned Jen
Got it.
Spencer and all that, what's made them successful?
Right. So thank you. I totally lost train of thought there.
All
Yeah.
good.
But no, it's the same thing. It is ownership, and this
Yeah.
is like I had this conversation yesterday of, do we have only one core value, which is we take ownership of everything we do?
Yeah.
It's like, is that our only core value? Okay, there's probably a couple more that we should put in there, but I actually, and I'm seeking honest feedback on this because I don't know it any other way. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm an obsessive junkie. Like, if one beer's good, 27 must be
Yeah.
fantastic, right? So,
Yeah.
like, hell, make it 28. What do I care? More is better.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm the absolute worst. People should look at me, my work ethic, the way that I take things on and stuff, and go, that's an edge case. That's an extreme. Back it off from there. Be smarter. Um, but I also, and I'm seeking this guidance from my team because I don't know how to tell them other than I'm biased towards this, but yet this
Yeah.
is the pattern that probably with bias I see out of people who are successful, is
Yeah.
that, Jen Spencer came into Allbound early on and there was nobody that had more ownership. Not, she didn't have the equity stake. She didn't have that level of ownership. She could get fired like the rest of, like anyone else could, but she took actual ownership of this because, and she made an okay salary, but it's not what she could have been making. But she
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm going to be all in on this all the time because she was investing in herself.
Yeah.
She sees that as like, yes, I'm investing in Allbound, but I'm investing in my practice as a marketer and as a voice of a company and as a future CRO and a future CEO. She looked at it, and I can't fully speak for her, but from the outside, I
Yeah.
see that in hindsight as she was investing in herself via investing in this company with that level of ownership. Because I got to
Yeah.
tell you that the first people there in the morning and the last people out way late at night and still on Slack talking through the weekends, those are the people that were taking ownership. Obviously, there was the founder, there was me, the co-founder, the CTO.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it makes sense we were doing that. Then it was Jen Spencer, the CMO, and then when Greg came on, he was a bit
Yeah.
into that as a lead sales guy. It was Ryan Sherman, VP of Product at Allbound, who's still there and still running the whole thing. There
Yeah.
was Matt Hensler on the customer success. There was a handful of us that were just all in as much as humanly possible at all time because yeah, it was cool, it was neat, but I dare say that most people were like, they understood that what they did and invested could achieve this outcome for the company, but for them, and for them, if not here, at the next place.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
even
Greg
the
talks
current
about that all the
CEO,
time.
even the
Yeah.
current CEO, Daniel, and when he came in, it was the same thing. He leaves a bigger job at a bigger company, cuts the salary in half to come take this gamble on this thing
Mm-hmm.
because he's like, I see the vision for this company and the cool things you were doing for great customers and the great opportunity in the market. But also, part two of that is that ridiculous career move is the gamble in himself. And he's like, I have to prove that I can go do this. So I'm
Yeah.
investing in Allbound nonstop all the time to my own detriment because I'm also investing in myself. Because
Yeah.
what's the story that works out? I mean, your resume is just your resume, but the experience of what you
Hmm.
do is when those jobs come to you when you're successful and
Yeah.
be successful however you think that you need to be successful. But I only know effort and time. That's
Yeah.
all I know.
Well, it's the controllables, right? You can't necessarily control the outcome of the company, but you can control how much you put in. You can control the time you put in and the quality. Like those are the controllables that I think that at least I mean we've seen too. Like that's what's made people successful here, and we're hoping it continues at Abstract and the people we're bringing on. We have employee number 4 and 5 starting in the next couple of weeks, so we hope that continues with them as well, and we all kind of build this team together.
Yeah, and that's the hiring part is tough of looking
Yeah.
for people to come do this because we've all been on the other side of this too, where you're like a job's a job's a job, and
Hmm.
and you've got your life balance and things you're looking to do, and sure you're looking for a good job where you're a good fit, makes good pay, and all of that, and you balance that out. But I think in the end, most humans are, on their Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The job fits in there to fuel the hierarchy of needs, which is cute and neat if the job is actually self-actualizing over time, but in
Yeah.
most cases, it's not. You want to be told you're smart and good and you're doing a good job, but also you'd rather just have the money and not be there. So,
That's it's the pros and cons of it.
yeah, Jen Spencer used to say, she said one time after we were struggling on the early hires, trying to bring people in at Allbound, she says, man, people say they want to be at a startup. They're miserable where they are and they can't stand it, but they want to be over here to make a change and an impact. She goes, but in the end, I think they just want to be able to wear sandals to work. She's like, that's really what it is they just want this, what they think is a sexier, neater, more interesting vision. But I cannot tell you how many humans we've interviewed over the years who they're sure as hell not going to take a pay cut from where they are.
Yeah.
Then they want to try to bring in a competitive thing. I'm like, I'm not in a competitive cell with you. I'm like a startup here with this tremendous opportunity. It's
Hmm.
on you to gamble the math and gamble on yourself that something can work from this. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's definitely a bit of a mindset. And I know the word startup's a bit loaded too, because I think I
Yeah.
just saw yesterday, like the CEO of WeWork has a new startup valued at $1 billion. You can kiss my ass if you think that
Yeah.
that's a startup.
That's
No, it's not a startup. I mean,
no,
okay, so it's a broad category, but I think you've got
it
to
is.
really subdivide it down of are you bootstrap pre-revenue, are you
Yeah.
investor funded, and where are you? Because honestly, I got a better salary once we had investors than I was getting paid before we had investors. And even
Yeah.
then, like that salary was nothing compared to what the market would pay. If I was purely chasing the money and the salary
Yeah.
right now, then I wouldn't have done that because even my higher salary with investor money, the highest personal salary I've ever made, just on pure salary, even then,
Mhm.
like that sucked compared to what the market was. And there's no chance I could find a replacement for myself. There's no chance I could barely hire engineers, anyone to match that because why would
Mhm.
they? They can literally go to GoDaddy or any old
Yeah.
company and make way more and do way less. Why would
Yeah.
they?
Well, and it's the challenge, I think, and that was one big thing before I started. Greg really emphasized that he's like, we could run out of money in a year. Like that's where we're at. Like, are you ready for that? And I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, we'll be fine, we'll be this, but literally every action that I take impacts whether we get to that point or not. And so it's really like this risk I didn't really know I was taking because it's like I believe so much in Greg, and I think that's so important for people who are evaluating startups and like an actual startup, right? Not $1 billion valuation startup, but like believing in the founder and those leaders that are currently there. Like, do you see yourself, like, are they creating a vision that you want to be a part of? And I think that's the bigger question people need to ask themselves.
Yeah, you're kind of joining a bit of a cult.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, in
and
a sense, yes.
signing over your worldly possessions. Well, and I'm transparent on to a fault. So,
Yeah.
by the time when so we grew all bound, and when I left to spin out to start this thing, I was at say 120 grand a year in salary. a very reasonable number for a
Hmm.
married man with not high. I don't have expensive taste and I have no children.
Yeah.
So like, I drive a beater old car like on used tires. Like it's just I'm a thrifty person. It's in my nature.
Yep.
So even still, that's a very comfortable living. That plus wife
Yep.
salary, everything's great. And I make this choice to quit that to instantly go to $0. So I go to zero to start this new vision in this thing that I have. And and it's worked itself out. But 4 years later, I'm still only at $60,000 a year in salary because all I've done all along the way was just get to a spot in the first year where I made $40,000. I didn't lose any money other than the opportunity cost
Hmm.
of having a higher paying job. So nothing went upside down. Then COVID hit, but we got even busier, so we weren't spending any personal money because we weren't going anywhere. And then like
Yeah.
things kind of could keep ticking up and it's worked itself out. But people ask all the time about starting something and what they should do in their life. And I'm like, it boils down to this type of finances that you can sustain
Yep.
and that you want to sustain because, it's very real, to actually experience that, to go cut your salary to zero or cut your salary in half, feel
Hmm.
what that feels like. And by the way, most of us can get by on less. You
Yes.
know, do we
Yes.
want
You just
to?
don't want
No.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
Exactly.
do you want to know? Because I remember very distinctly, like that Christmas on 2018, my wife and I drove up to Target. We were decorating the house. I wasn't feeling super festive because I'm super stressed about my life decisions, but I'm trying to not be emotive
Hmm.
because I'm clearly an open book. And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to kind of like, no, no, celebrate this. But as we're walking through Target looking at lights and stuff, I was like, we don't need to buy $6 lights to hang. I'm like, why? Like all I saw was dollar signs from that point forward and questioned every single thing that was happening in our lives. And that's a
Hmm.
whole new level of point of stress because I haven't, I'm very fortunate, but I haven't probably in 15, 20 years cared about a dollar sign attached to something unless it was
Yeah.
a really massive item. Refrigerator breaks, you go, okay, go buy another one. All
Yeah.
right. Like you don't think about it when when money is okay. And,
Hmm.
you just don't. And that level of like thought process was very different that my wife could never quit the job that our
Yeah.
insurance was on her insurance. And again, we were with no kids. It was just the two of us navigating this. That's really hard. And so, yeah, I think that's interesting that this is the first episode of the Startup Sidekick, and
Yep.
basically my message to people is don't do it. Go get a normal job.
Yeah.
Don't be dumb. But
But
however, if you are, definitely think of it from that level of how much can you cut down and get by on for how long for this
yeah.
vision that and again back to what I said at the beginning of advocating for yourself, what's your payout going to be from this? And by the way,
Yeah.
you cannot control if and when that might happen, but just making sure
Hmm.
that you're set up so that if and when you do get there and you can take something off the table that you go, okay, this makes sense. And also understanding that so that as the company grows and as some of those things come into focus, you understand how that could positively impact you. So as with abstract, as you guys start to raise, you and the team get to start looking at what's my stake, what am I accruing, where's my ownership coming
Hmm.
from, what could that actually mean to me, so that you can constantly reevaluate how much longer you keep doing that. Because then,
Yep.
as looking with that ownership methodology, you still need to advocate for yourself, your salary, your current things, because it's a
Hmm.
real punch, by the way, Claire, when you go to hire your next marketing person and you're gonna pay
Yeah.
them more than you pay yourself.
Whew.
And they're
Not
gonna
looking
work
forward to that part.
they're going to work less hours. They're going to do
Yeah.
less stuff. They're going to barely make your life better, but they're going to make it better in ways that you need it to be better. But you're going to have
Yeah.
to swallow that pill of they make more salary than you do because you're looking for this longer term payout.
Yeah.
Like you want the vision to happen. If you died tomorrow, you can't take any of it with you anyways. So was
Yep.
it a more interesting ride along the way? Is there something that
Hmm.
will sustain? And if you do survive and it gets going somewhere, when will that payout work for you? Like that stuff does
Exactly.
come into focus, but be ready for that. That's the message for it. That's the salient takeaway is like cut it down, figure out how long you can get by on nothing, making that
Mhm.
gamble.
Yeah. And I think, I've always been, I grew up, my parents had always taught me, if you work hard, good things will come. Like that just was always kind of ingrained in me, but it's the environment's changed so much now that you have to have, I think, a little bit more than just work hard, right? You have to have that vision and you have to see that opportunity to have that hard work pay off. Otherwise, you're just working hard for maybe no growth or no reason.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't constantly reevaluate what we're doing here. And there's three distinct times where I said, I walked to my wife and I go, I'm done, and she's like, I
Yeah.
know, or to my business partner or someone else. And we've had multiple points where we're like, something fundamentally has to change for us to keep doing this. And in
Yeah.
fact, maybe that was said this past, this week on Monday, but but it is because we can take these periodic check-ins and
Yeah.
evaluate on a personal and professional level of what's still working, what's not working, because this is a really tough one because as a founder, as a co-founder,
Mhm.
as a service-minded oriented person who's coming in to commit to a vision and do stuff,
Yeah.
you will sacrifice yourself for the mission. And we just at Startup AZ this summer, the retreat, it was focused all on mental health, and it's a
Yeah.
perfect time for everybody for a lot of reasons and global situations and whatnot.
Yes.
But it's really important because we've now seen so much of us who are really similar minded, who
Yep.
will, much like our fearless leader Greg at Abstract,
Yep.
win at all cost. Okay,
Yep.
that's a great attribute, but also it needs to have a check and balance and need to be reeled back in because he we can't have Abstract win at all costs. We can't have Abstract win at the cost of, your health, happiness, your marriage, Greg's health,
Hmm.
happiness, his marriage, his kids' health, happiness, and growth.
Yep.
This has to support it. They have to be in equilibrium or balance, or don't do it. And money is though if you can't figure out how to do it with less money and get by, and that you do it for too long and that puts the family at risk, then don't do
Hmm.
it. That's fine.
Yep.
You'll hear Clay, go listen to podcasts. Clay Mass talked about Infusionsoft in their early days. Um,
Hmm.
uh, Multiple founders here in town have talked about that. The brothers who started Insight, they've all talked about that with their spouses of like how did they survive this along the way? What did they need to be doing to understand the risk
Hmm.
is bigger than just oh, it's a job and some money. It's like no, it's actually a much bigger risk to your health, happiness, your marriage, and
Yeah.
your family.
Yeah. So on that, was it worth it? Is it worth it? Everything you're doing, like right now, looking back, like, would you say it's worth it? In 10 years, are you gonna say it's worth it?
um, I that's a really nuanced. Probably there's got to be a bit of a nuanced answer for that. I
Hmm.
think that it's worth it in that it's job creation. So is it worth it, for a lot of other people? Sure, because we've created jobs. I mean, we launched Allbound and immediately created 15 jobs over time.
Yeah.
Some of those jobs are stressful, painful, didn't work out. Things came and went, ebb and flow of the scale up and down of startup life. But the company now just getting past the B round, which is a great time for you to be asking me if it was worth it. Getting past the B round, the company is, debt free, well funded, and growing really well. And they're like 75 or 100 employees. I mean, they have a whole engineering team in India of like trying to get to 40 people there. That's 40 families that,
Hmm.
their rent and their mortgages and their food and their kids' educations are paid for by their effort at this company that we put together. Hell yeah, it was worth it. Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Could they get a job somewhere else? I guess, but it is a zero sum game. If we didn't create this, those jobs don't exist. That's 40,
Hmm.
that's 70 less jobs. If I didn't start a little taller, and then with again the help of everyone who's followed along, bought into my crazy cultist vision, and have
Yeah.
shown up and just worked their asses off, we wouldn't be at 40 jobs here. These are 40
Hmm.
jobs that are basically, I'm watching this now. We just had our first baby on the team. I'm a grand boss for the first
Yeah.
time. We had our first baby on the team. She's on maternity leave, and I'm like, wow, I built a company that can sustain a maternity leave for God's sakes. How weird is that? I can pay people to not be here and have a baby. What?
Yeah.
We'll have benefits kicking in January 1st because I've got a really young team, but haven't
Yeah.
needed it. But I'm like, we've built a company now that people can show up and their effort can be rewarded, right? And so again, it's them,
Hmm.
not me. They're the ones doing it. But yeah, that's rewarding that. And I think about this on a quiet moment on a Sunday where I'm out digging in the
Hmm.
yards, trying to do something that's not work, and
Yep.
thinking, like, is this still worth it? And I'm like, it's worth it to the 40 people whose lives, depend on it and that are driven by it. And then in the selfish moments, I'm like, what's in it for me? Okay, so I got, Allbound got to a B round, and I was fortunate to get to pull some money off the table. Great. You go, oh, okay. There's some there's some
Yep.
zeros in the bank account.
Yep.
Shoot. pay. Guess what? So a bunch of that goes to 401k that I haven't been paying into for the past 10 years, right? So it's
Yeah.
personal financial, like, debt to myself going, check, retirement.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So, but a little reward, to do something for yourself, and you go, okay, neat. But it's just shit. I mean, so
Hmm.
I worked my ass off to get some money to acquire some shit. So what? Like, I don't
Hmm.
derive pleasure from that. Maybe other people do. Maybe people go, that Ferrari sitting out the driveway, oh my God, it's totally worth it. It is to me, that is a completely pointless little endeavor.
Yeah.
Money solves problems, and that's about it. But I would say, for me, is it worth it? Yeah, because it's what I want to do, of launch things and see them happen and be successful and give
Yeah.
people the opportunity to be successful. And so, since that did work out at All Bound, absolutely worth it. Since it's working out a little taller, absolutely holistically worth it. Day in and day out, I question it, but and my wife questions it. What's in it for us? And I'm
Absolutely.
like, no. So I think that from that perspective, yes. If from the perspective of, was there an easier path for my life, this was not the easier path.
Mhm. So that's a great way to put it, the easiest path, but you look at what you learned along the way and what you've been able to do. So something would have had to give, right? If it was easier, because that's just kind of how life works.
Yep.
So what's next? Well, I mean, what's next for a little taller for you? I mean, what do you want to do?
More schemes. So
Yeah.
a lot of the vision that I've kind of had is always scaffold. I mean, and I'm not that original. I'm just, looking at other people's patterns and seeing what might apply with what I'm doing.
Hmm.
But the vision that I personally had for Allbound as we were starting it was that we would build up basically a MarTech platform. I mean, it's
Hmm.
channel, basically it's PRM, partner relationship management, but it fits in the MarTech stack. And so, was because I'd seen the rise of a lot of other MarTech companies, which was, well, if you build the software and then you have services that are next to it, then a lot of people win. And
Hmm.
I thought, well, if we build a platform and it's got attached services, that means that it's supporting the platform, then clearly the platform has been successful. So I saw it as a bit of a vision and opportunity for that. And I've been fortunate to work with some of the early groups that spun out of, like, Infusionsoft, now known as Keep, saw them spin
Hmm.
out start services next to that, and how crucial the ecosystem was, but also how much of a broader impact it could actually make. So that was the vision, was get All Bound to a certain spot, spin out, continue to perform services next to it, use that as sort of the cash flow to build up the
Hmm.
agency, which we did, and then bring on other services, keep growing the team. But then that was a stepping stone to what we really want to do with this, which is, I wanted to build a shop that could design, develop, and market solutions, software, or even physical products. Where whatever, we built scrub, we design scrubs, make
Yeah.
scrubs. So that's one of our investments. But I wanted to build a factory that I would have, so I would actually then have essentially my team that knows how to produce at cost, to be able to invest in other ventures that we find interesting, that we want to invest and start. So it was basically my way of bootstrapping, being able to help bootstrap my funded
Hmm.
software startup to my next company, to my next ventures. So that's where we are now, is that
Got
the
it.
intro saying that we're an agency and venture studio is because we've got three different products right now in various stages of development that we're funding
Yeah.
to build, launch, and sell. Pretty,
Yeah.
and by the way, not super unique. Plenty of most venture studios were agencies or want to branch out, but imagine the cool impact that that can have over time, that we can help launch other companies. And that 5 years from now, we're like, wow, there's three companies out there, all with 70 people, approaching new rounds of funding and
Yeah.
still growing, or doing whatever their path is. You're like, that's a heck of an impact that you can make on the community.
I would say so. I think that's awesome. And so keep looking out for that, because I assume your three companies is not where you're going to leave off either. So I assume it will grow. But I
No.
mean, if our listeners, audience, if they want to find you or learn about Little Taller, where should they go?
Obviously LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
you can find us right there. Find me, find my partner Alexander right there. And also Brandon Clark, our partner in the venture studio. Look him up as well. So he's a
Perfect.
heck of a person. So is Alex. I'm surrounded by some very dynamic and smart people that are very community focused, and I would absolutely encourage people to reach out to them, myself included, and but definitely those guys. obviously littletaller.com, but otherwise, now that COVID's a bit of a thing and we can get out and meet humans
Yep.
again, that
Yep.
we might actually be fortunate to run into people around town as well,
Yeah.
at
That's
various
awesome.
events.
And if you could give any last pieces of advice, or if there's anything we didn't talk about that you think is important for either people starting this journey or looking to start the journey, what would you tell them?
Boy, I think we've already thrown out most of the words on the topic, so perhaps
Yeah.
just the light endeavor is don't do
Don't do
it.
it. That's gonna be
don't
the title. Don't do
don't do it. But
it.
but I mean, you do need that honest pushback of that
Mhm.
of immediately like it's a really long struggle, hard path. Don't do it. Second thing is probably look for patterns, look for strong mentorship, look for patterns of people who have done it, look for people who can help you, and also blow ideas up of yours and give you the hard feedback, and and really question you. Don't just
Mhm.
look for a thought. Don't look for a little bubble where you're just an echo chamber that you've created. Everyone's going to tell you your stuff's that's a great idea. You should do that. They're
Yep.
being polite. Everyone likes to be yes and move stuff along. So
Yep.
find yourself some strong mentors, find yourself a good mentor network, and who will also blow things up, challenge your assumptions, and hold you accountable to the things you need to do in order for you to be successful at it. And give yourself some timelines along the way and be super open and honest with your family about what you're doing and give yourself the timelines for those things to work and know when to pull the ripcord when it's not working. Because whatever it is you're thinking of starting, it is not more important than your faith, than your family, and than your own personal health and happiness.
I love it. What a way to end it, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And I hope everyone got to that last part, because I think that's the key right there.
My pleasure. Thank you. And thanks
Yeah.
for starting the podcast with me. I look forward to all of the interesting episodes to follow. And I also very much look forward to continuing to see you and Greg and the abstract team grow that and make the big impact in the sales community that you're making.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or visit abstract.ai, abstrakt.ai to learn more. Keep kicking ass. Peace out.